Hey everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, insane people, and anything else we find interesting. And as usual, we got some more Reddit posts to check out today, so feel free to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments and let's get into it. PE teacher kept making fun of me because I was not athletic, and I made him vomit from exhaustion in front of the whole class. This was well over a decade ago, but I wanted to share. I was born with a congenital heart disease and had surgery as a kid. I am completely okay, but sports were obviously not my thing. I was small, skinny, and clumsy because I never really could do the typical outdoors stuff like most kids. Got teased and bullied and all that. Typical for a geeky kid who doesn't excel with the football. In high school, we had a mildly problematic PE teacher. A typical sports dude who would make fun of the slower kids. I still remember how he ordered my overweight friend to do a gymnastics jump from a trampoline over a stool, which he obviously couldn't do, and he fell so hard he cracked his head. I found peace with myself long before and mostly didn't care and just took it. But it was stupid, and I hated how he always encouraged the jock culture of making fun of the nerds. We would constantly do basketball or soccer/football. Thing about my specific condition is I don't do explosive and reactive sports at all, so I would have to sit down every few minutes to catch my breath. You would think, what's wrong with that? But I was shamed about being the weakling of the class every week. I like sports though, a lot. I was just always told by my parents and doctors to take it easy. And growing up I noticed I had no problem whatsoever with endurance and steady long-distance efforts. As long as I don't go into the red, I could keep it up for quite a while. So it's not a surprise I fell in love with road cycling when I first saw the Tour de France on TV. I was super skinny, couldn't sprint, but I could climb a long mountain any day, pacing myself and blowing nearly anyone off my wheel on endurance. I got myself a road bike and never told anyone at school about my rides. Here comes the revenge. We had a class sports day and there was a bus arranged to take us to the top of a mountain about an hour away, where we were to go on a hike. Our PE teacher said that if anyone wants, he will cycle up there and we could join him on the climb instead of the hike. I was the only one to volunteer. He was surprised and commented something to the effect of keeping up and not gonna wait for you, but I insisted. He couldn't know I was more than capable to climb that mountain because he only saw me struggling with sports with him. He also couldn't know that was my home hill, literally starting a kilometer from my house. I did that climb 100+ times and knew it blind. Knew my pacing, and while I was no Tadej Pogacar, I knew I could probably drop my PE teacher at will there. For cyclists out there, the climb is 12.5 kilometers, 6.9% gradient, super regular. For non-cyclists, a perfect climb for a lightweight rider with good pacing and stamina. So the day arrives, and I did my warm-up, nutrition, and everything as if it was a life-or-death mountaintop time trial, and rock up at the school in my full racing kit and my racing bike. I was 17, weighed 55 kilograms, and totally prepared. He was a typical middle-aged, overconfident ex-soccer player, probably weighing 90 kilograms, on a standard mountain bike. Super perfect situation. He sets a relatively hard pace on the 10 kilometers flat before the climb, and I don't speak or take the front. I take my good time to get back on his wheel after intersections, and he probably thinks he will drop me the second we start going uphill. Then the climb starts, and it becomes very apparent to me, but not to him, that he is near his limit, but that it's at least 5 kilometers an hour slower than what I could do on that mountain. But I don't attack him. That would not be satisfying. Instead, I start bantering how someone's getting dropped today, and it would be embarrassing if the whole class sees how I beat him. And then I take over the pace and slowly start turning the screw on him. I went only a little faster, then a bit more. I knew after about 3 kilometers he was in the red, so I ease off, keeping him just slightly over his limit for the next half an hour. I wanted to make him suffer, but without dropping him. I let him recover for a tiny bit if he starts looking too bad, but then I would slowly push the tempo up to make it as painful to him as possible. It was Tour de France level mind games. I don't think I've ever enjoyed myself on my bike more. We made it near the top together and I let it rip on the last 300 meters or so, and it was that typical humiliation attack every amateur group ride cyclist knows. He dropped like a stone. I got my revenge and was very happy with myself. He said something about his heavy bike and I kept my mouth shut. But it got better. On the top, he was clearly dead. So much so he had to vomit in the parking lot, and even if only a few classmates saw it, everyone knew. He had to sit out the hike after, and I just quietly sat there with him, because I didn't need to do the hike like he promised. and just looked at him, enjoying the sweet revenge. I didn't say anything after that, nor did he. He never made any comments to me in PE class again. Lesson: don't bully your students. They might surprise you. A bullet came through our house. A few months back, a bullet entered our home. It went through siding, insulation, drywall, then went across our living room and into another wall. Our neighbor has target shooted often in his backyard. We just assumed he used proper safety precautions. Me and my 3 kids were sitting in the living room. My oldest just got up and walked into the kitchen a few minutes before. The bullet entered above my son's head where he was sitting in a recliner, and entered the wall next to the couch where my youngest was sitting. It entered high and came down low. We know these neighbors. Our kids go to school together. So my husband immediately called them to ask them to stop shooting. Once he learned what happened, he changed his story and claimed that it must have come from somewhere else. So we called the police. The officers and my husband walked over through the woods to talk to him neighbor to neighbor, to maybe come to an agreement to not shoot towards our property and maybe pay for damages. He wouldn't answer the door. Their teenage son and his friend were outside and claimed the dad just left to run errands. So we pressed charges. He has not cooperated with us or the police. Last we heard, the guns in question were confiscated and an investigation is in progress. But what is frustrating is they're still shooting. There is no backstop. It's still pointed in the direction of our house. So we keep calling the police and filing reports. But because the police don't see it happening, they can't prove it. We have new next-door neighbors, and they also have had bullets in their home while it was being built. They also filed a report. At this point, we don't feel safe being in our backyard, allowing the kids to play in the woods. It wasn't a tiny bullet. It was a .38 Special. The department and state investigators cannot give us any updates since it's under investigation. I think it's the teenage son who has access to these guns when the parents aren't home and they are covering for him. It's terrifying. If my son had stood up, it would have struck him in the head. Oh, and to add, a trajectory person came and they did determine that it did come from this neighbor's home. The casings on the ground match the bullet extracted from our wall. But because they can't prove who shot the gun, the case is still dragging. And that brings us to the update. We went to the police department again in person on Friday trying to get answers, since my neighbor was still shooting on his property with his targets facing our home with no backstop. All we heard was, "It's under investigation, we are waiting on ballistics, we cannot give you any information." It's been 6 months. I decided to write emails to the Commonwealth attorney and his staff. I also emailed everyone on the board of directors. I emailed a letter with the description of what happened along with pictures. By Monday, I started getting emails and phone calls. No one in any of those offices knew about our case. They were all shocked and disturbed that this has been going on for so long. Last night, the chief deputy contacted me, and shortly afterwards, he was arrested on a 6th-degree felony for shooting into an occupied dwelling unlawfully. Now, how is it that for 6 months it was like pulling teeth to get answers? Then 3 days after a bunch of emails, he gets arrested. Was it being swept under the rug? Thank you to you all for all of the advice and encouragement to be loud and demand justice. I finally feel heard. Now moving on to the next update. We had a meeting with the prosecutor and the director of the Victim Witness Program. The neighbor was arraigned and has a Class 6 felony. He has a lawyer. There is an upcoming hearing to discuss a deal. His attorney asked if we would be open to dropping it to a misdemeanor, because the neighbor, quote, has ordered dirt to construct a backstop. I told the prosecutor that he was supposed to do that 6 months ago when the incident first happened. To me, this shows that he really didn't take what happened seriously. And also, even if there is a proper backstop, if his teenage son is shooting these high-powered guns unsupervised, a proper backstop won't do anything to keep us safe. I told the prosecutor that if he moves his targets so they don't face our property, and he pays for damages, then maybe we would be willing to drop the charges. But I am not sure what to do. My hubby and I also spoke to the prosecutor at length about our concerns with the minor and these guns. The few times we've heard shooting since the incident, when the officers arrived to the home after we called, the parents never come to the door. They state that they just got home, so it couldn't be them. We also spoke at length about what happened to our neighbor's home while it was being built. It was also full of bullet holes, and someone smeared dog feces all over the inside of it. There is a path heading from their property right back to our neighbor's. This plot was an abandoned property for years until someone bought it, tore down the abandoned structure, and rebuilt. If the felony charge sticks, he won't be able to possess any firearms. But if he gets off somehow, then it could backfire on us. But if we have it dropped to a misdemeanor, then we can make sure his targets don't face our property at all and get our home damages paid for. Dude, what? I really hope OP did not drop those charges. And this last update was posted a year ago, and that's all we've heard since then. But the thing that doesn't make any sense to me is how OP's neighbor's attorney is basically saying, well, if this gets dropped from a felony to a misdemeanor, then we'll make sure that the neighbor doesn't do this again. He'll make sure to build a dirt mound or move the targets and basically just stop shooting your house. But I mean, isn't that kind of the point no matter the outcome? I don't think saying we'll stop shooting your house if you drop the charges is a very good bargaining chip. And also a commenter points out regarding how OP said if it's dropped to a misdemeanor, then they can make sure the targets don't face the property. The commenter said that will mean nothing without enforcement. Who is going to do the enforcement? Getting a judgment is one thing, getting it enforced is another. Where I live, the police have made it plain that enforcing misdemeanors aren't very high on their priority list. And if the felony charges stick, then they won't be able to have guns anyway. I mean, not that that necessarily stops people from still having guns, but at least then there would actually be some enforcement. Still better than them getting off with a misdemeanor with just some vague promises about taking better safety precautions. But yeah, hopefully the situation worked out for OP. I mean, no one wants to have to live in an active war zone just because your neighbors have more guns than brain cells. My landlord shut off the electricity in the middle of a heat wave. We were in New York. Electricity is included in our rent. Yesterday, the landlord put notices on our doors warning that our power consumption was unreasonable. Trying to survive 100+ degree heat in a very poorly insulated building with no central AC will do that, I guess. She threatened to suspend service temporarily if we continued. The notice started with "Attention residents," and I saw identical papers on some other doors, so I assume it was directed at all tenants. 2 hours ago, she followed through with her threat. The power is out in my apartment. The hallways and stairs are barely lit. My landlord is not answering her phone. What can I do? With the kind of person she is, I'm worried that she'll just wait for the end of the extreme heat, evade consequences by turning the power back on, and pull this crap again in the next heat wave. Update. After the post, my significant other and I decided to get a hotel. When we came back this morning, the power was back on. My neighbor told me what happened. Shortly after we left, someone in the building called 911 because their son was showing symptoms of heat exhaustion. He's fine now, by the way. The firefighters were curious as to why the power was off. Long story short, after the kid was safe, they had a nice talk with the landlord about endangering a child's life to save money, and she was asked to turn the power back on. The poor kid's parents have already begun complaints to the relevant authorities. I'll be meeting a lawyer tomorrow about breaking my lease. Anyway guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more Reddit content like this. So stay tuned for more and I'll see you next time.